So before I share my screen, I'm going to say what we thought we would do. So someone already alluded to this. We started with housing, like our second release. So we're actually going to do our sort of homepage, our events and our news as our release one. And then housing is the first sort of big area that we've tackled with services. Mostly because we've got a very popular team at Greenwich. We've got a product designer, multiple content designers, user researchers, and a product manager working on a website. So we're really lucky in that sense. We are trying to use as much out of the box stuff and try and be as MVP as possible at all times. But what we thought we would talk through today is we thought we'd really quickly show you our as is on our Greenwich website, which is actually a Jardu site at the moment. And then I was going to talk us through, we went out and we tested with people. We've tested people in the library, we've also tested people with learning disabilities as well. And we've ideally tried to target people who have a lower readability age than what we would write for as well. So I'm going to show you a few designs and then show you what we've landed on, how we got there. And then Laura's going to talk through some IA, because IA was one of those things at Greenwich. We were like, how do we start this thinking? It's a bit of a content user research team up here. So we'll talk you through our story, because there's lots of chat going on stuff about user group and how you get away from user group within the housing space. So by that, I mean sort of council tenants, leaseholders. I'm sure there's other groups as well that I've forgotten. But we have moved away from that actually. So we will talk you through how we got there. Laura, I wondered, landlords and private renters, there we go. I wondered whether you want to do a really quick kind of show of what content we have on our current website, just so that people are aware of like our starting point.
Yep. Yeah, or like Connie and probably Nicole as well, being at Greenwich, we're not used to Zoom, so if one of us like messes up, please forgive us. Hopefully I'm sharing my homepage, my housing homepage.
Yeah.
So fabulous. So yeah, we haven't changed this yet to match any of the work we've done. This is just the as is and has been the as is for some time. Top task focused. Apply for home, council rent, HMO licenses, and request a repair. Oh God, I've got something blocking my screen. Never mind, I can see it. And then yeah, like anyone who's used Jardu will probably be familiar with this sort of navigation widget here. But within all of these, there's various amounts of other things. Some of them make a lot of sense in terms of what they're called, like council homes, but you click through and it's maybe not clear. You know, you only know what right to buy is if you know it's not clear necessarily. And then you can also go through and click view all, which takes you through to exactly where you are. A lot of them are like that, quite circular navigation. While there's nothing particularly missing, it's just a lot of repeated pages, a lot of we'll link to it here and here, instead of thinking about the one sensible place to put it. And then there's a few places, it might even be the council homes one actually, where someone needs a survey. Let's just put it where the first place we find it. Let's not really think about it. Let's just add it to this page, because it might, you know, it's to do with housing. It can go there. So there's not been really a lot of thought. There's been a lot of, if you've got like anyone knows, like if you've got dodgy foundations of content and you start building on it, it just gets dodgier and dodgier. You're never going to fix it by working like that. So yeah, that's where we are really with the web. It's the information is there, but it's really hard to find. The navigation is really circular, and I think in our we had a planning meeting this morning, and I think our product manager said that there were over 200 branches of IA and content in all these different places. So yeah, that was it, really just super confusing.
Thank you, Laura. Anything else to cover there?
I can show IA, but that was just on the website in terms of like the overall content. So I can cover the rest later, or I can talk a bit more now if people have more questions.
Do you want to cover IA stuff and then we can do designs?
Yep, I'll move into the IA. Let me bring up Whimsical. 1 moment, please. As soon as I get used to Zoom at the end of this meeting, I'll never use it again, and it'll just be wasted.
I find the screen sharing particularly discombobulating.
Honestly, yeah, like what is it? It won't even let me. Oh, okay. I was trying to select the screen. I'm already looking at. How embarrassing.
Also, Whimsical's been wonderful. We were all quite skeptical, weren't we? We were like, oh, we've got to use another tool. We all love Miro at Greenwich, but Whimsical's been wonderful for mapping our eye really quickly.
Yes, it has. And
Yeah, I really like it.
this is so embarrassing. How do I can't minimize the toolbar along the top to switch tabs to go onto Whimsical. Oh my goodness me. There we go. I'll just do that. I'll move the window. Sorry.
Okay. Can you click on a tab?
I can click.
Oh, I see. Website. Oh, yeah, yeah. I see where you're going. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost there. Oh my goodness. So sorry, everybody. Let me move this.
Sorry, it would help if these tools all had a similar user experience.
Don't worry. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, get the right tab, and then share it, so I'll be where I need to be.
Good thinking. Yeah.
It was like trying to explain how to send an email to my dad. It was just right. Okay, I'm on the right thing. Okay, now I'm going to share. Zoom, share screen. Share. Okay. Yes. Must repeat what Connie said. Whimsical's been fabulous for this. I had never used it. This is my third council. I've been in council digital teams like basically all my career, and I'd never used Whimsical, and I wish that I had previously. So the first thing we did was just map out everything that we had. It's probably going to run quite slow because it's huge. You can see it's also running on a bit of a lag, but hopefully what I was kind of saying a moment ago about lots of circular navigation and all the millions of different branches you can kind of see here. It was also, even though there were a few top tasks on the landing page, in the back end of the website there wasn't really any priority to anything, so it was a lot of kind of manual, like let's put that there and let's put that there. So when you'd see something on the landing page but then you go to change it and it'd be somewhere else, and it was just alarming. Lots of also things, I'm sure every council has got this with every service because it's a habit that we're all trying to break. Things called trying to teach customers our language, calling things what we call it, you know, not very customer focused, and also things that people wouldn't like. If there's things that were called things that the customers did understand, like housing register or apply for a home, you'd click onto that, but the actual task would be on the 5th or 6th page, you know. So even the pages that were ostensibly called something and ostensibly should work were just very, the content didn't kind of support them. So it was a mixture of it. Loosely it was structured by task, so buying land from a council, applying for a home, get help if you're homeless, but the groupings just didn't make sense. I'm trying, sorry, it's moving so slowly, but yeah, further down there was building work, repairs and improvements. That is essentially repairs. Who know, you would never know that necessarily. So repairs was there, and that's where you'd get a bit of a sort of circular thing as well, because repairs, you can have repairs for tenants or repairs for leaseholders, and some information is only for one of those groups, some is for both, some is for landlords. Like, so you've got a mixture of IA that is ostensibly focused around tasks, but we're writing for we're writing for specific groups. So it often, you'd find yourself having to duplicate things or do clumsy links, and you're linking to a page for leaseholders that is addressed to tenants. It's really for everybody, and it was quite confusing like that. And then just lots of so yeah, this council tenants is a good example of what I was about to say. So council tenants, all of this is relevant to council tenants, but loads of it is relevant to leaseholders as well. So yeah, this is where we were really, and zooming out you can see just how massive it was, and I'm sure the content designers here would recognize something like this. It's just massive and it went on for ages. So that's where we were. Oh God, so sorry, it's running so slowly. So what we decided to do, Connie, do you want me to go into like how we got to, do you want me to just basically talk through all the IA stuff, and then you're going to pick up at the end about, do you want to talk about what
it might be interesting because I remember we had that session about noun versus verbs and then testing which one connects with people. So I think we had this assumption that user group must be right, other people are doing that, but actually that, I'm not going to ruin the story.
Yeah, no, it's good. Sorry, yeah, it was a real learning curve, this IA. So we had this huge mass of content, and what we decided, first of all, just to get something, you need to just get something to test before you can move on. My assumption, which ended up being proved wrong, was that we could probably sensibly group all these, structure the IA around use groups, leaseholders, council tenants, for landlords, private renters, other things. So we did that as example 2. And then for the other example, we did it based around tasks, report A, find A, whatever, to try and make it task-based, to try and make it an active action, right? So we created the one based around user groups and the one based around tasks, and we sent those out to test with Connie. And we also did some scenario testing with staff in our contact centre to kind of see if they could find what they needed. Oh God, this is running, I'm so sorry, this is running so slow, it's very irritating. So here we go, this is by topic. With iteration 1, so that's where we sort of break things down a little bit into do this, apply for this, whatever. And my hunch was that this wasn't going to work. Not that it wouldn't work, but that grouping by user group would be better, right? Because you come to the website and you know you're a tenant, so you need, I don't want to see anything for landlords because that's not for me. I want to know, I'm a tenant, I want to find this stuff for tenants. That actually ended up not working at all. There were parts of it that it wasn't a complete failure, but as I've just mentioned, things for tenants can also be for landlords. Things for landlords can also be for leaseholders. Sometimes you're in one group, sometimes you're in 3 groups, sometimes you're in not really any of the groups at all, and you might be looking on behalf of someone else and you don't know what their status is, right? So we found out that on the surface, yes, you come to the website thinking I'm a landlord, I'm a tenant, but then we would then have to have every possible combination of people's circumstances that could ever exist in order to make the IA work for those people, and it just didn't work. And it would end up with a lot of duplicated stuff and pointing backwards and forwards. And if you're a leaseholder, what you want is in the tenancy section. So we didn't go with that. What we decided to do was task-based. Task-based worked well, and even when we knew that worked well, it still felt alien. Historically, councils, we've always tried to do user groups and things, but if you know what user group you're in, if you know you're a landlord or a tenant, whatever, then you also know what you're on the website to do, and we can cater to that. Because if you want to report a repair, you can do that, and then we can write depending on who you are. You don't need to know if you're a tenant or a landlord. There is just too many variables with the use group. So doing it task-based made it a lot easier to say, here's information for this task, it's here. If you want to do it, go there. And we didn't have to worry about the 50 combinations of user group they might be in. So the task-based IA is what we went with, and we just iterated that. I think we ended up like 2, maybe 4 or 5 iterations, maybe not that many. It was myself and my colleague Alicia just did this, and then with Connie's testing we kind of helped to refine it. We learned some things about things that weren't really repairs covers everybody, but there are specific things that only landlords can do, and there are specific things that only leaseholders can do, and there are specific things that only tenants can do. So within the tasks we were able to split the content a lot more clearly, like here's the task for report a repair, if you're a leaseholder do this, if you're a tenant do that. And then by not having to give people circular links through to cross 4 or 5 divides of user groups, by just putting information in a task, we were able to sort of be a little bit more intelligent about where we put things. And I'm trying to zoom in to show you an example, but it's just lagging so slowly. But essentially, yes, what we ended up with was going it by task based, and we made it verbs as well. Like any good content designer will do that. And what we also found was that we never set out to not do top tasks. We never said let's not do them. It just kind of naturally fell that we don't have for housing. It's not saying we'll do this for every part of the website going forward, but how it's fallen for housing is that there are no defined top tasks. We just organise the content, and by reducing the content and doing all the great content design work and testing with Connie and all that stuff, we were able to get rid of so much content that wasn't serving a purpose, and combining stuff and shrinking stuff and all the typical content design stuff. What we were able to do was have a reduced amount of content, a smaller, simpler IA, because it's just tasks and not crossing over 55 user groups. The content that we came up with in our tasks kind of sort of naturally led to intelligently designed content where not everything's a top task. Of course, every task was important. You didn't have the random little bits at the bottom that no one's looking at, the little bit of policy down there or the link there, the whatever it was. Every task, every grouping, landing page, whatever you want to call it, was essentially a top task. So everything is a task. but we haven't got the 3 or 4 top tasks that you'd have at the top, could be found that we didn't need it. By labeling everything with tasks, by making it an action, by making it clear what it is and who it's for, we eliminated having to have top tasks because people could just find what they wanted. And if I was able to zoom in on what I want to zoom in on quite quickly, I'd have talked you through a few with examples, but I will send a picture of this if it doesn't work. Yes, so this is the kind of thing that we've got. Repairs, find somewhere to live, keeping you and your estate safe, report a concern. I think there's a not doing top tasks feels quite groundbreaking, because you know it's such a council way of working. I love a top task, but it has worked by not worrying about what our top tasks are and just thinking about organising this information sensibly in a way that meets the user's needs. We just haven't needed them. I was going to say more things about and talk you through a couple of these, but as you can see, it's barely moving when I zoom in and out. So what I might do is take a picture of our final IA and send it in the chat so that you guys can see. But at this point, I'm going to hand over to Connie if you want to say anything else about this, Connie, because this lag is annoying me so much.
Thanks, Laura. Let me share my screen. This won't let me share.
Connie, we've got a few questions, but then if you want to talk through stuff first, and then, or do you want to take?
Okay, let me have a look at the questions. Is the Whimsical board open to view? I'm sure we can send it after, Laura, can't we? That's from you, Aaron.
I think we can.
That's for me, because I think Whimsical has the option to see you've got a sort of view only version, and if it's edit, then you have to pay for those accounts. But for viewing it, like, so then people could have a little dive around, if that's.
Yes, completely. And if we can't, for whatever reason, I'll send what a picture of what it was versus the one that we've gone with. Did the questions in the chat, did we want to do those now, or did you want to carry on talking and do the questions at the end?
You know what? Let's keep going, because we're doing top top, then let's come back to questions maybe, if that's all right for people.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I can't share my screen, but I have put the frame, which is the mirror you sent Aaron, on the right hand side.
Oh.
So if people are able to follow through there, perhaps Aaron, you could also share.
I can share screen for you. Yeah. Okay, I see where you are. Yeah. Okay.
I've just stolen an area. So I can see a few people there. I can put on the bring everyone to me. Oh no, I can't do that. There we go. If you can just zoom in a little bit, Aaron, as well.
Zoom in, sure thing.
So just to add a little bit more around the researchy side of things from what Laura was saying. So like I said, we're really lucky we've got a product designer who's working a few days a week on this project with us. So we went out there and we need to understand a few things. So we wanted to understand the mental models of sort of Kyle's versus List and how this actually works for people's mental models when it comes to something like housing. So we started with housing. It's a tricky area. It tends to be quite political usually, just because there's so many people who work in it. Lots of people own different parts of the website. So making sure that we break things down as in an easiest possible way was really important. So our product designer came up with 3 designs. We did a bit of stealing from other councils. We did quite a bit of reading around information architecture. So I'll talk you through our designs in a sec. And then we're also looking at mental models. So we're looking at what happens when you come to a section and you're unsure what user group you belong to, or perhaps you're not sure what you need. So how can we get people to what they need in a quicker way? It's another thing we were really looking at. And the third thing is that we sort of blindly walked into assuming we would need top tasks, but actually this research showed us that top tasks are an amazing thing to use when content is not categorized, when content is in a messy state, where we do not label things properly. But actually, because we put so much work in, like Laura showed us, into the information architecture, there's 2 things on top tasks that actually we noticed. So firstly, if you zoom into design 1, these are the designs we have used. So design 1, we tested and we did the same 5 scenarios, which I can share afterwards. I can't remember exactly what they were. But design 1 essentially is top task plus quite a few tiles at the service level landing page, and then into a list. And actually what we found is that top tasks, there's two sort of behavioural things going on here. So either top tasks were entirely ignored, which was interesting. That was sort of not to be expected. People going to the sort of main bulk of those tiles, or even interestingly, actually used incorrectly. So whereas we see top tiles as those little sort of red arrows should indicate visually that you're going to be sent to something, actually people read them as columns, and they were titled to the columns below in our designs, which therefore made us realise the content didn't make sense because people were seeing those top tasks as titles. So then design 2, if you move to the right, we got rid of the top tasks. We still have a fair few tiles, so this will need to be slightly tweaked, but we need to reduce the word count and ideally the amount of tiles we are presenting people when they first come into housing. And again, you go into, once you click into something like find a home, you then go into a list on design 2. And then design 3, which did not work at all, but we were quite interested because it might work for other sections. But top task plus a list, and then going into tiles, so reversing it, flipping it on its head to understand like how design plays, what a role design, visual design can play throughout a journey. It was just, it's an odd mental model. Like if you think of it like a menu, the tiles sort of indicate that go and find what you need, and then once you're there, you have a list, a choice of things to choose once you're one step in. So this is what we've decided to go to. We've actually spent much longer on housing than we will have time for other sections, but we did learn what we needed to. So design 2 is our real winner here. We've tried to keep it as MVP as possible. Due to doing so much work on the IA, we will not be using top tasks, but we might want to bring them in for other sections where perhaps we have less freedom with their content. And then if you just scroll to the right hand side, just a few little learnings. There were loads, but I've just tried to sort of get them down to a few. When we tested initially user group, leaseholders is a really odd word. Like council tenants is understood by lots of people. Leaseholders caused loads of confusion. Lots of people call themselves right to buy. Lots of people assuming that a leaseholder is somebody who pays a lease in a private property. So that was a bit of an absolute red flag quite early on, which moved our argument into like, let's just be fast-paced to get people where they need to be. I'm sure other councils are really focusing on this, but like a huge part of our like mantra when we're reading a website is like heavily manage expectations of people. So a slight worry that find a home, which is one of our sort of direct verbs, go find a home, that then takes you into a plethora of different options, not necessarily giving you the answer you want in lots of cases given the housing crisis, but being really careful with language so we're not raising expectations. So what can we do also to really justify for our staff as well who work really hard to not be raising expectations very early on in the website journey. Top tasks, like I just said, they're either ignored or used incorrectly, and this felt really risky. So for us, spending longer on doing the IA worked a lot better and kind of made everything a bit cleaner as well. And most recently, we've sort of worked with housing to think about actually that top row is quite important. So if you go to design 2, that initial top row of tiles, they essentially act as a little bit of a proxy for what a top task might be. So what are the places and the pages we want to connect people with most kind of efficiently and quickly? Can we put those on that top row as well? I think that is everything. We could talk you through, I think there was a question actually about our general testing research process for the IA. I could share afterwards. Long story short, Elizabeth, we did some really high level card sorting. I'm not a huge fan of card sorting. I think it's quite a lot of effort to set up, and depends who you test with. I don't think you get very rich learnings. But we did card sorting with staff, actually very senior staff we started off with who felt quite wedded to language. Just to understand groupings, that was more about mental models. We then went out there and we had, I think we had typical prototypes for the noun and the verbs to understand which scenario got people to the place in a more accurate way, which is all about streamlining our language. And the hypothesis was like, what would happen if we went user-based versus verb-based, task-based? So that was almost tree testing. I think that was an optional workshop as well, which I'm sure we all use here. And then quite quickly we went into Figma, got pickable designs, these 3 designs, gave people scenario testing again, a journey from the Greenwich homepage all the way into finding a guide or article that they found useful. What did that look like? Filmed it, and then myself, content designers and our product design got together, and it was quite obvious that our design too was the thing that worked best. I'm trying to think what else. I think that is kind of in a real nutshell what we did.
That was really useful. Thank you.
All good. I was going to say, I think that's everything. We can share the IA afterwards. We're quite happy with this, actually. We feel quite confident. So, like, we're working on registrations now. Last week, I was doing some adult social care testing. And I think for us, like, once we realize like these templates work for something so complicated, it means that having started with housing, which felt messy, I'm hoping that we can then just like free up a bit of mental capacity to use the templates we've got. And I also think there's a general encouragement like to not use top tiles. I think like from a user's perspective, you can get to people where they need to be, and you know, let's drum in this mental model and teach people that tiles at this top level means this, and then a list means this. I think we should try and do that in as many places as possible. And we will share something our product manager sent us, which is like the 23 times where you should use top tasks. And a lot of it is like when you don't have time to categorize your content properly, top tasks are fantastic. There's loads of really good questions to ask yourself as to whether you like how to make that decision.
I have a fit. Am I muted? No. All right, good. Thanks, Laura. I have a feeling Ben might have posted that in our Miro board already, in the sort of resources bit.
I put, when Constance mentioned it a couple of months ago, I put some stuff in there on your behalf, Constance. Sorry.
Brilliant. Connie, do you want to take some more questions? There's loads coming in.
Gosh, right, I'm going to click on the chat.
Actually, I tell you what, I'm going to stop sharing as well.
But it's so funny how we just get so used to using Microsoft Teams. It's almost worrying to speak complete Zoom.
Very, yeah. So Ben's got a question. Have you discussed the implications of changing the way you IA designed housing with how you structure the rest of the site? So having different IA styles across different sections, and whether that's going to have an impact on users and their sort of mental model of navigating this.
Let me just explain what so I probably didn't want that very well because I was doing it really quickly. I was just wondering, like, for housing, are you creating a bespoke IA style for housing, or are you going to kind of, do you think you'll copy that across multiple sections when you do all the sections, or will you have a mix of styles?
I don't think it's bespoke because we didn't like have a destination in mind when we started doing the IA. This was not only was it the first big section, but it was the first section. And we just kind of left our expectations and our assumptions behind us. Let's just find out what works. So it might be, so that obviously now so someone's mentioned that we're on registrations. Registrations has got a total of about 15 pages compared to housing, which has got hundreds. So realistically, we're probably going to do something a little bit different for registrations. So I don't know. I feel like Connie might have a research perspective on this, but it almost feels like it's a little bit early to know if what we did for housing we will replicate elsewhere. If we're going to say this is what we do for a big service versus a small one, this is what we do for a really heavily customer focused service like bins versus one that's a bit more corporate like data protection or something like that. I don't really know if we've got a destination in mind or a set of practice in mind for our IA, because all we thought about was housing was let's just actually see what works instead of building our expectations into it. Connie, what do you think? Do you think we've got any kind of plans for our IA and like any templates for it?
I think what will help us as we're doing the project, we have a log of things which will help with our content style and our governance. So I think it will become very telling if there's a section where we're suddenly going quite off piece and it feels quite different. And I think at that point we need to start thinking, you know, if we take housing as our you know, as our starting point, how much do we want to deviate from what we've done with housing? So if you take something like registration, it's a very, very small section. The people who come to that section are asking for very, very, very different things. And someone who is registering a birth would probably not be looking at citizenship. So I think that's the kind of thing we just think, who is the person who is looking at that content? With housing, the person who looks at a little bit of advice around find a home will probably be quite interested in the other things we're talking about as well. There'll be sections where it's very, 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 very siloed, like registrations. But it is something to be aware of. I think ideally it would neatly fit together. They would sort of echo each other. So we teach people, this is how we've written our website. This is what you look at.
Yeah, that was my point, the learnability of the site as you move through it, because you might be doing 3 different things, I guess. And if the sections are quite different, how that would disorientate someone to think this was like this, but whether it's conscious or maybe slightly subconscious, I don't know. But yeah, it'd be interesting as you move forward whether you do find that people do have any feedback on that.
Yeah, and equally as well, registrations is not the only service. Social care is another example, but for services where a lot of the content is emotive, one of our priorities, again, without forcing anything, one of the priorities for registrations, which I'm working with Nicole very closely on, is people registering a death. They don't want to see weddings first. They don't want to come and register a birth first, right? So maybe we might think about putting deaths at the top, so people who are there to do that very upsetting thing can just click that and not have to worry about anything else. You don't necessarily have that need to do that with housing, but you might have that need with social care, right? So I guess it's about balancing mental models, expectations of what you're going to get when you come onto the website versus how the state of mind of the user at the time. So yeah, I think this is a huge learning thing for me, for Connie, for Nicole, for all of us as well. Like we don't know anything about how this is going to go 6 months, a year down the road when we're in the 4th service, the 10th service. We'll definitely be sharing our learnings as we go. But I think for us, we're just very lucky. We know that other content designers have said they don't have user researchers, they have like one. We're very lucky with our user research, so we can test everything and make sure that we're not accusing people.
Yeah, I guess that's why it's the benefit of sharing it. The other thing I was just going to say was your comment about the column headings. When I was at Haringey, that exact comment came up where people thought they were column headings. I've just put a link in the chat. We redesigned it into 4 so that they don't, and they look more like buttons so that it didn't look like column headings. But it's interesting that you got exactly the same, because out of the box, I think it lines up as 3 columns.
Yes.
That might be something other people might be aware of moving forward, that you might want to look at that.
Cool. So what else have we got? I think you did answer this, Laura, but maybe it's worth bringing up because it's quite a big question. So what's your alternative to find a home?
We've called it find a home, but within that we've kind of find a private rented home. We've split up all of the different homes that you might find into separate things.
So you click on find a home and you get a list of
and then
options.
with ones, so like apply for social housing, that has become the LG, not in Jardy, but in LGD, that's going to be a step-by-step guide. So for anything that's just massive like that, step 1, apply for this, step 2, get your document, all that stuff. So yeah, it is find a home, but with it, it's not like find a home, click that, and then here's all your options on one big page. It's all the different types of homes are split out.
So does that answer your question? Is there anything else you want to ask on that?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, and it makes sense. I was just trying to work out because the way you'd answered it made it sound like you didn't start with find a home, and I was like, wow, how do you have so many at that top level? But that makes it perfect.
Yeah, just reading back your question, that is actually what you're asking, so I apologise for that. Yeah. Also, I can't.
No, it's fine.
I can't seem to. Much like my musical was lagging, this is lagging as well. And Caroline's just left a question about Blue Badge, and I can't type a reply to that. But we haven't addressed that yet. But we have ongoing of adult social care, and I think when that gets finalised, I don't know if the AA is finalised, but when it has been finalised, I'm sure we'll share that. But yeah, that's historically a question for councils. How do you put Blue Badge? So yeah, we haven't done that yet.
Yeah, I was asking particularly because that's a conundrum we're facing as well, because obviously you can get a blue badge for a child, so having it under adult social care, people with children and families might miss it if they're after a badge for you know, a child with needs. So
Yeah, I think like yeah, it's absolutely, it's historically always just sat in adult social care because adults are the only ones who can drive, but that doesn't mean that they don't have children, you know, because the blue badge can have a child. I know that what we're looking at for a similar thing for registrations is order a copy certificate, so that covers births, deaths and marriages. Yeah, birth, deaths and marriages, so you can order a copy certificate for those. And so what we're thinking about doing is having the page for that. So in this case, it would be the equivalent would be the blue badge page sitting wherever it sits. And then for all the relevant sections that it applies to, having a link to it and just having, you know, making it a clear link instead of having one long link that's like, you know, apply for a copy certificate of a birth, death, marriage, just apply for a copy of a birth certificate, and that's in birth, but one page is the same. So it might be the same with blue badge where we link that from children's and adults and somewhere else, but it's just one page. But yeah, that's I'll feed that back. I think Connie might be doing some work with ASC as well, but I'll feed that back to our content designer Alicia, who's working on it, to let her know that you're interested, because I'm sure she'd love to share that.
brilliant, thanks.
Is it not? Wouldn't you put it under parking? Because it's essentially about parking, regardless of.
No one ever goes there. Well, I'm just speaking from my own experience, so forgive me. We had that question before at my last council, which was Northampton Borough Council, and the parking team wanted it there, and no one ever went there to find it, ever. That may just be a Northampton thing though, because you know our customers learn from us, right? They learn where things are. But yeah, I'm sure we'll test that.
So this is a case for Detective Connie, is it, to look into the
Yeah,
blue badges?
literally
Access
detective.
is what the people want. We're just coming up to time, so I just want to say thank you so much, Connie and Laura, for sharing your insights and your learnings and stuff.